What's going on, everyone? This is Matt Squeaky Clean here, and today we're going to be working at SR8 Beast. SR8 Jeep, bagged with universal air and airlift air suspension. We didn't do the original installation. There's a couple issues. The system is a couple years old already, so the Vire compressors, as well, it's known that in a lot of cases what happens to them as they age, and leaks also cause Vire compressors to run on an extended period of time. So his compressors are shot and now to the point where they're blowing fuses. So we're gonna get them right fixed up, and stay tuned. Okay, so what happened is one thing leads to another. So his water trap, which is the original airlift water trap, is cracked over here. I'm not sure if you guys can see the actual crack because it's cracked on the pathway going right into the manifold. Obviously the tank always leaks. When the tank always leaks, the pressure switch or the internal switches of the airlift 3P dictate and trigger the compressors to run on a regular basis. So this poor man has been driving around with his compressors running on a regular basis, trying to fill up the tank to the point where the compressors, what will happen is they'll eventually start overheating. And when they start overheating, they have a protection circuit or an overload circuit. The Vire compressors come with that. But after some time, it basically fries the system. So what will end up happening is his harness, so his 3P harness, started to melt the fuses. So let me show you guys an example. Right here. This is pretty, it's pretty melted. And needless to say, because these are the main compressor fuses, he's not able to trigger the compressors. When the compressors are not able to trigger, he's not able to fill up your tank. A shout out to Tim Hortons, good old Canada, because we're Canadian, we're proud of it. And what ended up happening is it would be blowing his fuses. So these compressors are probably in due of an upgrade. So we got him a set of, well, he actually purchased it himself. He purchased the Stealth Dual Pack, the 400Cs. So the Jeep main tank pressure never really goes above 150. The default setting on his 3P is 150. It's enough to lift the not airlift, but he's running the universal airbags. The universal airbags don't need a lot of air to air up. So running the tank at about 150 PSI is perfect. So 150 PSI is pretty much what the 400Cs are rated at. And here we are. We're going to put him in and we're going to replace his aging Vire 444s, which are over here. And we basically fixed it all up. I think the other thing that he's got is one of his rear bags is moving around. These are the universal bags in between there for those curious. You can kind of see through these nice wheels. And they're moving around, so I'm going to check for leaks to make sure that the fittings are not leaking, and basically give it a nice little fix up to make sure that everything's running hunky-dory, because now he's in good hands. So what I did is the wiring harness, original wiring harness from Airlift is still good, but I ended up upgrading them to a 10 gauge fused cable wire, which is a lot stronger than the 12 gauge that the Airlift comes original with. And then we kind of seal it up really nice. So these should be nice and robust and allow to give enough power to the compressors without frying any wires or anything like that. But really the problem here is not the wiring harness. The problem here is leaks, and you guys need to get on top of leaks, because the reason why his compressors were running on an extended period of time is because of the fact that he was losing main air pressure inside of his tank. So because he's no longer, keeping the pressure, and the pressure sensor is detecting the right amount of pressure, it prematurely triggers the compressors. And that's one of the biggest issues. Like anything that runs in an extended period of time, like imagine if you're completely revving your engine for an extended period of time, you will eventually blow. Same thing with the compressors. If these compressors keep running and running and running and running, and they're not able to fill up a tank that's supposed to be sealed tight, something's got to give. And in this case, what happened is, one, the motors or the pistons start getting worn out. The compressors themselves now start to draw a lot more current because they're no longer working as good as they used to. And when that happens, you're trying to push a lot more every inch of electricity or current through the actual wiring harness from the battery. And then what ends up happening is it just reaches over capacity. And the weakest link, which is the protection fuse, is what goes. So which is what's been happening for him on a regular basis. Now, one of the solutions that you will commonly read on in regards to this issue, or blowing fuses on the Viair compressors, if you want to save some money, a lot of the guys out there will recommend going with a higher amperage fuse. So instead of a 30, which is a default by Airlift, people say upgrade to a 40. So that gives an additional 10 amps into the compressors. But that's just like a quick patch up, which ultimately can cause your car to catch fire. So probably if you start blowing fuses, first thing to do is, one, double check your grounds, make sure that the current and the voltage is properly grounded, so you have a nice complete circuit. You're not starting to lose the electricity where you're not supposed to, that it's nice and grounded and balanced. Make sure that you don't have any leaks, because leaks will trigger components to run prematurely and later cause fire. So just always be on top of those things if there's anything I can do. But we're going to tag along, and we're going to move along, and we're going to continue working on it. I'm going to take the rear apart. I'm going to upgrade the 444C compressors to the 400s, connect them up to the main wiring harness, and we'll make sure that everything runs smoothly with no leaks. And then once we do that, I'm going to lift it up on the lift and double check for leaks underneath the car. But it's kind of interesting how the battery on this car is underneath the front passenger seat. So that's kind of cool. But we're just going to keep... All right. So we cleaned everything up. For those who might not be aware, the battery for the Jeeps is underneath the seat. So if you drop something like a bolt or a screw, I call it the pit. If it goes in the pit, it's going to make tons of noises when the car drives over bumps and stuff like that. So make sure you guys are very careful. The best way to go about getting to the battery is remove the seat by popping these caps. And these are 15 mil bolts that are underneath there. There's 2 in the front, and then there's 2 in the back over here. You can kind of see the battery is underneath there. Do the diligence. It just makes it a lot easier to remove the actual seat. Like, you don't really have to remove the seat, but you can loosen up all 4 bolts, remove the 4 15 mil bolts, and then tilt the seat back. That will reveal, the opening for where the battery is. Right behind the battery over there, unfortunately I don't have it apart, but right behind the battery down there on the floor, there's a retainer plate. It's being held by 2 13 millimeter nuts. When you remove that, it's essentially like a flat plate that holds the battery, and this will allow you to shift the battery out and get to the positive terminal, because the positive terminal is quite hidden in there. Do you see it where I touch the 2 10 gauge wires? Right in there with new connections, so right there on the positive terminal. So it's really kind of hard to get and slide it in there. It's very easy to sort of, like, as you're trying to put the nut on there, to flick it in, and then it's going to basically fall into the pit of doom. So best thing, and then you're going to even struggle with like a magnetic pickup in order to get the nut. So don't even bother. Best thing to do, I found over the years working on these things, is loosen up all the 4 retaining bolts for the seat, tilt the seat back. That'll give you complete opening, and it's bada bing bada boom, really easy to do. So that's that. I also recut the grounds, make sure that the grounds are nice and flat, put new connectors on them, and shrink wrapped. And Clean up the trunk a little bit. So these are the 400s, all connected. New water trap. We went with the SMC. Put my own little logo on there and put a nice little logo on the manifold. So nice and clean setup. And should have no issues. All right, so we have the SRT8 Jeep on the left because the owner was complaining, saying that his rear bags spin. This is a universal air setup, so it's a bag over setup. It's an internally sealed bag. Universal air is great for Jeeps or any of the cars sort of that, you know, have a lot of space. We don't have to worry about fitment issues with the Jeeps, with Challengers and stuff like that, because these are all heavy American cars. For something like an SRT8, universal air is phenomenal. For a lot of the American cars, they're phenomenal because that's really their strength, their background. Their strength is not import. So there you go. So it's a big bag in the front, which is the, I think the Aero Sport, which has been tried and tested for many years. It's a great bag, but as you can see over time, they do kind of hit the control arms. In his case, his is still okay. So this would only happen if he drives really, really, really low, and then the diameter of the bag would be too narrow. So maybe he forgot to air out one day, and that's why it's a little bit of a scuff here. But a great solution because it allows you to utilize your factory dampening shocks, or the DDS system, which basically is the hard and soft ride suspension technology from Chrysler that allows you to make it hard and soft. And that's what a lot of the sort of SRT8 G like. They like the ability to be able to retain their factory settings and factory suspension, and you know, have the benefit of using something like a universal airbag, put it on and have the ability to be on air. Running universal air, single bellow conversion for the front shocks, and utilizing the factory rear shocks, which was originally installed by another shop. And here's the big sort of bag, universal airbag, but nice, comfortable single bellow bag in the back. And this has been on here for a while. You can't really, especially in the snow belt regions, you can't really escape the rust. So one of the things that we recommend is whenever you're installing universal air, a lot of the times they will ship you the brackets that are just in raw metal. Send them and at least paint them. It'll extend the life of it. I mean, this is still solid. It just doesn't look pretty. But this is what I'm trying to sort of focus on, which is a tip to you guys. Because this is a retainer plate and it has a bolt on the bottom, or not on the bottom, that retains this plate to a mounted rod. It's a very standard setup. It's a good setup, but it's very important to make sure that over time, even though this is a locking nut and they're great when they're brand new, if you're driving this and he is in the snow belt regions, which is where in Canada is a different ballgame than California, right? Keep that in mind. But if you're driving it in snow regions, well, depending where in California, because they have snow as well. But let's assume the warmer parts of California. Over time, these will kind of loosen their ability to sort of lock. So what we do is periodically, any of our customers that are running universal air, or any installations that we've done with universal air, and we've done quite a lot, stay on top of these, because when they start slowly loosening up or letting go because of vibration, especially of this fucking beast, it's a Jeep SRT8, it's got a lot of power. There's a lot of sort of launches and movements. When that goes, these sort of have a tendency to loosen up a little bit. When they loosen up a little bit, this gap between the lower plate is a lot smaller. What happens, you guessed it, the whole assembly or the whole bag starts to shift and move and spin because it's no longer locked. So what we do is we tighten these up, and then what we do is put a little bit of a Loctite in there, and then use another retainer nut in addition to this nut, and lock both of them together, just sort of for an additional, security aspect. Not spin around too much, because if you didn't give a lot of slack on the airline over here, for example here, it's okay. But if you didn't have enough of a slack of an airline, what will happen is this whole assembly will spin and will literally pull out your fitting and pull out your line, and you're gonna have a blowout. And it's gonna appear like you blew a bag, but you didn't really blow a bag, just the line pulled out from the push to connect fitting. So his were a little loose on this side. That's why he was complaining for some spinning. We addressed that, tighten it up, stay on top of things. So this car is pretty much done. The trunk's already done as well. So we had some leaks and compressors blowing fuses. So that's addressed now with new setup from Viair. And she's good to go. So it's going to be another camper. Happy camper. He'll be able to, SR Beast will be able to enjoy his car for the upcoming seasons. Hopefully next season's to come. And if he's got additional issues, he can always come back and we'll get him serviced. So on top of these and make sure everything's tight. So periodically remove the wheels and check the tightness of your suspension. You should be doing that on a regular basis, especially with wheel changeovers when you're driving it in the winter. And you can, because the universal airbags will take it. It's a phenomenal brand. If you haven't checked them out, universalair.com. Peace out.